We are back, chapter 8 in one voice, and this chapter is entitled Abolitionist. An abolitionist is someone who wants to eradicate something and works to eradicate it. It has been, often we've used it with slavery, right? And the abolitionist is working to get rid of slavery. So the first poem is called Friends. Politicians need friends. I still have generous funds and no wife. But my appetite for entertainment has shifted. Goodbye to my clubs, Whites, Brooks, Boodles, Miles, and Evanses. I have lost my taste for such things. And goodbye to large house parties in the country. My estate in Wimbledon sold. I dwell in smaller lodgings now, in town. I am ready for the next thing. Fits and starts. The papers reported on counterfeiters getting their final reward. The man was hung. The woman hung and burned. I proposed a bill to stop the burning of women's bodies, expecting no resistance. The House of Commons passed it. The House of Lords did not. Chief Justice Loughborough claimed public burnings leave an impression on the crowd, a deterrent to serious offenses. Deterrent means when you see it, you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. But would not such brutality deaden any sense of kindness and goodness? And rather than strengthen society, leave it weaker and immoral? No matter, my bill did not pass, and we say we are civilized men. Now we have a poem called A Visit with Mrs. Sykes, and this is from Miss Elizabeth Wilberforce, which of course is William's mom. You've heard that my son has turned Methodist. He is now more patient, kind with me than ever before. This evangelical madness has gripped my son. Dear friend, if he is mad, I hope that he will bite us all. Not sure exactly what that means. 10 hours a day, William Wilberforce. I wasted my time at Cambridge. Now I seek to amend my ways. A decade older and wiser, I spend 10 hours a day in study. History, literature, economics, philosophy, science, Bible memorization. May my eyes hold up. If you can't read, it's going to be tough, right? Always on the edge of eternal, William Wilberforce. I learned today that my dear Pitt's sister had succumbed in childbirth, the second of his sisters to die thus. So she died while having her baby. And he's had another sister that died while having her baby. I pray for my friend and grieve. How can we go on as if present things were to last forever when so often reminded by accidents like these that the fashion of this world passes away? Every day I live, I see greater reason in considering this life, but as a passage to another. All right, this is called A Modest Proposal, and this is by Sir Charles Middleton, and he's going to write this letter to William. My dear Wilberforce, my friends and I are working to abolish the slave trade. We realize, though, that we need a voice in Parliament to speak for us. But just not speak. The voice must speak well, as men are more likely to listen. Speak forcefully, as human lives are at stake. Speak graciously, as one can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Speak from a position of power, as men are more inclined to listen to the powerful. Speak magnetically, so as to attract more men to care about the enslaved. Speak truthfully, as the details need to be told. Speak without blaming, lest the failures of the past drown out the hope for the future. Also, the voice must influence the Prime Minister, since without his help we have no hope of accomplishing anything. Allow his name to be associated with the abolitionists, no matter the personal cost. Act on principle rather than for self-gain or personal ambition. Such a man will need courage and truth. Virtute et veritate. Remember, we learned that in his high school class, or his school classes. To bring forth a bill again and again and again, as many times as required until our end is achieved. Sir, you are the only man in all of Britain who satisfies these requirements. Please help. And that was from Sir Charles Middleton. This one's called Impossible by William Wilberforce. Parliament is made up of wealthy men, many wealthy from the labors of the enslaved. Why would anyone support a bill that would impoverish himself? Lunacy. And it's not just members of Parliament. King George III and the Church of England are invested in trade with the West Indies. If I couldn't get a bill passed to stop burning the bodies of dead women, how can I possibly end the traffic of kidnapped Africans? Out of sight. The enslaved are rarely seen in England. They live mostly in the colonies, the West Indies and the Caribbean, making their stories and their sufferings easy to forget. In the past. I think I wrote an essay on slavery once, and I talked with John Newton, kidnapped sailor, enslaved slave trader. And to get my seat in Parliament in Hull, I defeated an abolitionist who claimed the slave trade is contrary to the laws of God and the rights of men. He proposed bills of some sort. I promised him that I would keep the matter alive, which I haven't, of course. But why did I make the promise to begin with? Abolitionist history. And this is actually is not a poem, but it's simply some dates about slavery in England. In 1724, the Quakers in America, or the Quakers that were probably in England before they came over to America, passed a resolution declaring slavery is morally wrong. In 1761, the Quakers passed a resolution declaring no one who participates in the slave trade can be a member. In 1771, an enslaved man, James Somerset, is taken to England and escaped, free for 56 days before being recaptured. Chief Justice of the King's Bench ruled English law did not allow slavery. An act of Parliament could make it legal, but since there was no such act, Somerset could not be kidnapped, removed from England, and forced into servitude. 1776, the Hull representative puts forth a bill to end the slave trade, and it's defeated easily. In 1783, Quakers present Parliament 300 signatures calling for the abolition of slavery. Through the years, other bills presented all die without a vote. The bills died. A reply. William Wilberforce. So he's going to write back to, what was his name? Sir Charles Middleton. I feel the great importance of the subject, though I think myself unequal to the task allotted to me. However, I would not positively decline the offer, and when I return to London, I will pay you a visit in Teston and consult with you. January 1787, and this is by Thomas Clarkson. Wilberforce, and remember that was Sir Charles Middleton, and now we've got Thomas Clarkson. Wilberforce, good to finally meet you. Let me tell you my story. And I don't remember who Thomas Clarkson is, but maybe we will hear how he is. Let me tell you my story. At Cambridge, Professor Peckard gave an essay topic for competition, and he writes the words in Latin, which means, is it lawful to enslave those who do not consent? I researched Anthony Benezet, the American Quaker who fought for abolition. The Quakers were very peaceful people and were very against slavery in Pennsylvania and won it. In 1780, Pennsylvania outlawed slavery. I interviewed sea captains and sailors, first-hand accounts from those who have witnessed the trade. My essay spoke of the most cruel destiny of millions of fellows of human beings. Before I wrote, I could have dismissed the facts as embroidered, like embellished, right? But I have heard the stories with my own ears, and I have written them with my own pen. They are here in these notebooks. I won the competition. On my way to take a post as a clergyman, I stopped by the roadside and could not continue. What I had learned would not let me go. If the content of the essay is true, someone has to commit himself to ending slavery. And so I became that man. I lost my freedom to be anything I chose. The calling chose me. Yet I am not alone. It is as if the hand of God is gathering us up. When I could find no publisher for my booklet, suddenly I met a stranger on the street, Quaker bookseller James Phillips. Now I am published. Please, I ask you to read an essay on the slavery and commerce of the human species, particularly the African, translated from a Latin dissertation. This is titled Enmeshed by William Wilberforce. In the weeks after Clarkson first came, I have met Quakers, lawyers, clergymen, a theater patroness, a freed African formerly enslaved. Clarkson tries to draw me in. Now in March, they publicly ask if I will represent their cause in Parliament. I said I will consider. He hasn't decided yet if he's going to fight for this. My story, and this person has an African name, Oluwadu Equiano. Age 11, kidnapped from a Saka village in Igboland, southeastern Nigeria. From prince to prisoner. Survived middle passage, sold in Barbados, sent to Virginia. Eventually bought my freedom, settled in Britain, wrote my memoir, which was called The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Oluwadu Equiano. I seek to raise awareness. Africans are human. The slave trade is inhuman. End it now. Trusted Counselor by John Newton. God has raised you up for the good of the church and the good of the nation. Maintain your friendship with Pitt. Continue in Parliament. Who knows that but for such a time as this, God has brought you into public life and has a purpose for you. Who else did God tell that to in the Bible? Esther? Esther. My Dear Wilberforce by William Pitt. This is an undertaking you are perfectly suited to. All of your talents and character are in line with taking up the issue of slavery. No one else in the House of Commons has your passion or your reputation. What's more, you serve Yorkshire, one of the few counties in the country with few direct ties to the slave trade. I imagine you will gain support of a great many of your constituents. Do not lose time, or someone else less suited than you will take up the fight. 3 Williams. This is called 3 Williams by William Wilberforce. As Pitt speaks his minds to me, there at Hallwood, his property, we are joined by a 3rd William, Grenville, his cousin. All of us aged 27, both pledged to do whatever they can for the cause. Choice by William Wilberforce. Will I represent the abolitionist cause in Parliament? I said, I will. Okay. Committee for the Abolition of the Slave Trade. Thomas Clark, this is not a poem here, it just says Thomas Clark formed this committee of 12, 9 Quakers plus 3 of the Church of England with one desired outcome: abolition of British involvement in slavery everywhere in the world. This is entitled Realistically by William Wilberforce. If we seek right away to abolish all slavery in all places, Parliament will gridlock. This may be a constitutional issue. Does Parliament have authority over private property in a foreign colony? Oh, had a little trouble with this one. Do not forget the American colony crisis, for Parliament surely will not. Inarguable by William Wilberforce. Parliament has the authority to regulate British trade. Transporting an African with intent to sell is an act of trade. There, Parliament has authority. There we will begin. How to Eat an Elephant by William Wilberforce. With abolition as the goal, we break the task into manageable pieces. First desired outcome, to end the slave trade, the kidnapping of Africans, and forcible removal to the West Indies to be enslaved on plantations and worked until death. If we change the law to make it illegal to purchase, illegal to transport, the supply will cease. Perhaps then the plantation owners will treat their investment more humanely too, since no replacements will be ready. That accomplished, we will continue to work to entirely outlaw the trade. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. In Secret by William Wilberforce. We need information. Thomas Clarkson will tour England, gathering first-hand reports from sailors, captains, doctors, the formerly enslaved. He will not announce our intention, since once the public knows, we will use this information to further the cause of abolition. Clarkson's work will become more difficult, more dangerous. Accounting by William Wilberforce. The government keeps shipping records at the customs house. I gave Clarkson access. We hope he will get reliable numbers for the Middle Passage. The Middle Passage. First passage. The ships carry manufactured goods from England to Africa to trade. The Middle Passage. The ships carry kidnapped humans from Africa to the West Indies to trade. Third passage. Ships carry raw materials from the West Indies to England to trade. And I'm going to have a little picture so you can see where all those things are, a little map attached to this one so you can see it. The last poem in chapter 8, The Horror, by William Wilberforce. The records show that 5 to 10% of the captives die on a typical Middle Passage. So they die on the ship on the way over. Sometimes 1 in 3. An average ship sets out with 740 captives. Best case scenario, 37 die. Worst case scenario, 244 die. And we say we are civilized men. Okay, so a few questions. You don't have to write these down this time. Why was Wilberforce the only man in England who could work to abolish the slave trade? What do you think? He had the voice. He had the friendship of the Prime Minister, who's William Pitt. He had the principle, the courage, and he was the member of Parliament. Why did Wilberforce initially turn down the offer? Well, everyone was against the idea, and the king, the church, and the other members of Parliament were against the idea. And remember, for a Quaker to be a member is to be a part of the church. So basically, you can't be a Quaker and own a person or participate in the slave trade. Can't be in the church. Why did Wilberforce begin with the slave trade and not abolishing slavery itself, right? So he didn't just say slavery is illegal. He's trying to stop the trading. Parliament had control over trade. And while it maybe didn't have control over what was considered property in a distant colony, after all, the American Revolutionary War was fought over Parliament's rights to tax, it did have rights over trade. So he thought they could manage that. What was the problem with the Middle Passage? And that was how many people died on the passage. Okay, so check out the map so you can see that too. And I'm going to hope you got to finish this week. Good job. It's the last reading of this week.